Hey, what's up guys? It's Pedro here from noobcoder.com, and in this tutorial we are going to be going over some numbers as well as going over some math operators. First type of number we're going to be going over is an int, which is a whole number, and the second type of number is a float, which is a decimal number. So to give an example of an int or a float, we all know what a whole number is. So we'll give an example of an int first. So 1 is a whole number. So 2 is a whole number, 3 is a whole number, 10 is a whole number. So this is an int. Now to give an example of a float or a decimal, we'll say 1.2. So this is a decimal, therefore it is a float. If I say 10.5. This is another example of a float or a decimal number. So to prove this, what we're going to do is we're going to use a built-in function called type. So remember we used print function earlier in the first video. There's another function called type. We want to use this function, so we use the parentheses, and we could pass in what we want to know the type of. So I want to know the type of 10, for example. So what I'm going to do is, you see this little circle here, right? That means that I need to save this file. So I'm just going to say Control S. So now it's saved. Now I want to run this program. So we go to terminal, new terminal, and I just named my file tutorial 2 because this is the second video within the series, but you guys can name your files whatever you want. So I'm just going to say Python, and to run the file, we called it tutorial2.py. So if we execute this code, you can see within our console, we're not getting an output. So type is going to return the type of 10, but what I want to do is print that onto the console. So remember, we have a function called print. Go ahead and wrap this within the parentheses, and print is going to print out onto the console whatever type that 10 is. So now if I save this, make sure to hit Control S to save. And now if I come down here and press the up arrow on my keyboard, it should bring up the previous command that we typed in within our command prompt. Go ahead and hit enter. You can see that 10 is indeed an int. So now to prove that a decimal number is a float, we'll say 10.5, for example. So if I save this, execute this, you see that we get the type of float. So now that we know what an int and what a float is, let's get into math operators. So math operators, it might sound scary, but everyone watching this video should know what math operators are. Is like 1 plus 1, for example. Get rid of that space. So this plus sign is a math operator. So 1 plus 1, this should evaluate to 2. And then our print function will print that out to the console for us. So if I was to save this, go ahead and execute this, we get the value of 2. Another math operator, we could subtract 1 plus 1. Save this again. Go ahead and execute this, and we get 0. Now, if I was to, let's say, subtract 1.5, for example, so now we have an int that's being subtracted by a float, and we should get a float back. So let's go ahead and execute this. And you see that we get negative 0.5, okay? Pretty simple. So we did addition, subtraction. Let's give a multiplication. So you use the star, and we'll say 1 times 10, for example. So this should output 10. So we get 10 here. And one more example, we'll do division. So we'll do 1 divided by 2, for example. Now division will always give you back a float no matter what. So if I save this, execute it, we get 0.5. Now to prove that division will give you a float no matter what, let's say we do 10 divided by 2. So 10 divided by 2 should give us 5, but we'll get back a float, so it'll be 5.0. So executing that, you see that we get a float. So division will always give you a float, no matter what. So now we've done addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. But now there are 3 more operators I want to cover. And the next one I want to cover is called the modulus operator. Now this is going to give us the remainder. So let's give a good example. So the way that you should think about this is 1 divided by 2. So 2 goes into 1 0 times, and you get a remainder of 1. So that's how I like to think of the modulus operator. So if we save and execute this, we get the remainder of 1. Give another example. Let's say modulus 5. So 5 goes into 1 0 times, and you should get the same output. You should get a remainder of 1. So let's save this again, execute this, and we get the remainder. So that's what the modulus gives us, is the remainder. So now let's talk about the exponential operator. So let's say I want to do 2 to the power of 3. Well, you don't use the caret sign like this. You would have to use 2 multiplications like this. So this means 2 to the power of 3. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So if I save this, go ahead and execute this, and you get the output of 8. Last operator we're going to go over is the floor division operator. So like these double multiplications, floor division is you do 2 forward slashes like this. It will take the floor of that division. So let's make a copy of this. So we'll do 2 divided by 3, and I'll put that on the first line. So first we'll print out the result of 2 divided by 3, and then we'll take the floor division of 2 divided by 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this and then execute it. You can see the first result, we get 0.666666. But floor division says, hey, 2 divided by 3, and then take the floor of it. So that means round down. So that's why we got the output of 0. Giving one more example of floor division, let's go ahead and say, I don't know, 1 divided by 3, and then we'll say take the floor of 1 divided by 3. So now if I save this, we should get pretty much the same result. So you see with regular division, you get 0.33333. So we get 0.3, but then we round down with floor division. And of course, if any of these numbers are a floating point number, it actually changes the result from an int to a float. So this is 1.0, for example, and we do floor division. Go ahead and save this. And the first time we ran this, we got an int. But if I run this again, you see that we get 0.0. So this time is of type float. So that is pretty much all I wanted to cover within this tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next one.